You have only 105 days until the first darkness begins. This video may be the key to your survival. Pay attention to what I am about to say, for I come from a place where few return. My name is Mike Theodore. I am 55 years old, and for over 30 years, I have lived in the bubble of a truck, traversing the roads of the southern United States. The road has always been my home, my livelihood, and, in a way, my faithful companion. I have never been one to go to church every Sunday or memorize verses. However, deep down, I have always carried the conviction that there is something greater that protects us and takes care of us. Beyond this endless asphalt, there is a life that pulses. I live alone in a modest little house on the outskirts of Nashville. My wife, Carol, left us 8 years ago. A victim of an aneurysm, and my 2 children, now adults, have built their own families and live far away from here. The truth is that loneliness is a heavy burden, and many nights I found myself only in the company of myself. A cup of cold coffee by my side, while the news poured images of wars, tragedies, and politicians in constant disputes. All of this while ordinary people faced suffering. In those moments, I would lose myself looking out the window, reflecting on how everything around us seemed so fragile. It was as if the fate of the world was tied to invisible threads, about to snap at any moment. On the morning of August 15, 2025, I was driving my truck along a highway that wound through dense forests. The day was clear, with the radio playing softly in the background as I lost myself in thoughts about the unloading of the cargo that would take place a few hours later. It was supposed to be just another ordinary trip, like so many I had taken before. But life has the power to change in an instant. Suddenly, without any warning, an imposing moose appeared right in the middle of the road. Instinctively, I swerved, but with the speed I was going and the weight of the truck, I lost control. I clearly remember the deafening sound of the tires screaming against the asphalt, the feeling of the heavy steering wheel in my hands, and then the brutal impact that followed. Suddenly, it was no longer me who was trapped in the crushed cabin. I floated above the scene, watching my own body trapped among the wreckage, as cars stopped and people ran toward me trying to help. As the red lights of the ambulance approached, I watched them without feeling fear. In fact, it was as if an old weight had dissolved. All the worries, guilt, and fears I had always carried suddenly ceased to exist. It was at that moment that I noticed a golden light calling me. An indescribable warmth enveloped me, as if that intense light was pulling my soul away from the turmoil of the road. Strangely, I felt no fear. For the first time since Corral's death, a true sense of peace washed over me. The light began to intensify, growing brighter until suddenly, he appeared before me. Jesus was there right in front of me. It wasn't like in the old paintings or the movies I had seen. It was real. It was alive, and what impressed me the most were its eyes. When it stared at me with those eyes, it seemed to know each of my mistakes, every weakness. Every night I cried in silence. And surprisingly, even so, he loved me. I tried to find words, but the tears came. They were not tears of sadness, but of a deep relief, as if, after 55 years, I could finally breathe for real. He placed his hand on my shoulder, and, at that moment, I was overwhelmed by a love that surpassed everything I had ever experienced. Not even the love I felt for Cuero compared to this feeling. It was as if I were being enveloped by a liquid sun, warming every part of me. A heat that enveloped everything around. It was then that Jesus spoke, with a serene voice that seemed to penetrate deeply into my soul. You dedicated your life to serving more than you can imagine. You traveled roads day and night, bringing food, medicine, and hope to families that many times you didn't even know. You may not have called it a ministry, but it was exactly that. Every delivery I made was a true act of care for my people. This experience transformed me from within. For me, it was always just work, carrying the load, delivering it to the destination, and moving on. But there, in front of him, I realized that there was something sacred even in the lonely kilometers I had traveled. Jesus then became more serious. I need to show you something, Mike. Hard times are approaching. The hearts of people will be tested like never before. You need to see what is to come in order to warn them. In an instant, The golden light that surrounded us disappeared, and we found ourselves on what seemed to be a very high mountain. Before us lay the entire territory of the United States, as if I were observing an immense living map, pulsating and vibrating before my eyes. From the summit of the mountain, my eyes wandered into the vastness of the country, where cities and towns spread out, their lights twinkling in the night like stars trapped on the ground. It was then that Jesus looked at me intensely and, with a firm voice, spoke. "What can you see?" At first, everything seemed perfectly normal. The incessant glow of civilization, that electric pulse that never fades. However, upon closer observation, I noticed dark clouds gathering over some major cities. They were not storm clouds. It was something denser, laden with a shadow that caused a tightness in the chest just by looking at it. "Lord, what is this?" I asked, feeling a shiver run down my spine. "It is the first of 3 great events of darkness that will descend upon this nation." He replied firmly, "Each of these challenges will last exactly 3 days and 3 nights. There will be trials that will test the heart of my people. They will have to decide whether to trust in me or to rely on their own strength. And the first challenge will begin in just 4 months." My stomach froze upon hearing those words. 4 months. This means that later this year, on December 21st, 2025, Jesus emphasized seriously, the winter solstice, known as the shortest day of the year, will transform into the 3 darkest days in the history of America. As he spoke, something extraordinary had already unfolded before me. The darkness began in California, but it was not just a mere blackout. It was as if someone were pouring thick paint over the sky, covering everything and making it impossible to see any possibility. Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Denver. One by one, these cities will be consumed by darkness. Jesus explained that this first darkness will be caused by an unprecedented solar storm. The electromagnetic pulse will be so powerful that it will destroy transformers across the western part of the country. From the Pacific to the majestic Rocky Mountains, an extraordinary phenomenon unfolds. At 3:33 a.m. Pacific time, a shroud of darkness will cover everything. In that instant, chaos sets in like a lightning bolt illuminating the night. Cars, once in motion, come to a sudden stop on the roads, not just turned off, but completely inoperable. Electronic systems burn out in a matter of seconds. Traffic lights become inoperative, and cell towers remain in absolute silence. Devices that have always been an integral part of modern life simply fade away. Any vehicle manufactured after 1980 can no longer start. Smartphones, tablets, and computers, all in ruins. Even many modern flashlights will become unusable, as they contain electronic chips. And the solar panels? They won't work either, since their controllers will be burned out. I followed Jesus' request and looked more closely at Los Angeles. It was then that I witnessed the exact moment when the city, shining like a Christmas tree, was suddenly engulfed by total darkness. People were running in panic through the streets while stalled elevators trapped those inside, with no possibility of calling for help. Hospitals were trying to use generators, but the control systems were also failing, causing everything to stop quickly. "But how will people understand what happened?" I asked, feeling restless. "They won't understand immediately," he replied. "In the past, analog radios operated on batteries and were an essential part of our daily lives. Today, however, almost everything has become digital, and many of these devices risk being lost amid this transformation. Only a few old radios, along with amateur radio operators who prepared to face this kind of situation, will be able to keep communication alive." What I witnessed next left me in shock. In less than 6 hours, lives were being cut short. Not due to violence, but because essential life support systems had failed. Patients in hospitals struggled to be manually ventilated, dialysis centers were paralyzed, and diabetics faced a lack of refrigeration for insulin. Jesus looked with sadness and, in a grave tone, said, "In just 24 hours, tens of thousands of lives will be extinguished, mainly among the elderly and those who depend on technology to survive." However, he also witnessed something different. In certain neighborhoods, there were people ready to face the challenges. Families that still owned old cars from the 70s, all in working condition, used hand-crank radios, oil lamps, and wood stoves. The neighbors came together, helping each other, sharing what they had, and taking care of one another with a spirit of solidarity. These are those who heard the voice of Jesus. Some received the message through dreams, others came to know it through prophecies, and there are those who simply felt the wisdom I placed in their hearts, preparing them for what was to come. But Lord, I spoke with a choked voice. How can someone prepare for such a grand event? Jesus then smiled, radiating a peace that seemed to transcend all things. Allow me to guide you on how to prepare properly and what signs you should be attentive to. Suddenly, we stopped being mere spectators. I found myself immersed in the scenes, experiencing every detail as if I were really there. He began to guide us, starting with the weather. This storm, he said, will be preceded by signs in the sky. On December 15, 2025, an impressive spectacle will unfold in the sky, with hours of lights visible as far south as Texas. When the inhabitants of Dallas and Atlanta catch sight of those green lights dancing in the firmament, they will have only 6 days to make the final preparations. But what kind of preparations, sir? I asked, feeling my heart tighten. Jesus' voice became firm, almost heavy. You need to convey this message exactly as I will show you. When people look at their watches on December 15th, they will have only a few days to act, and they cannot waste time. He began to list, and with each word that came out of his mouth, I felt as if it were being etched inside me. First, fill all the containers you can with water, bathtubs, barrels, bottles, buckets. The pumps will stop, and it may take months before they are repaired. Secondly, it is essential that you store non-perishable food items. Items like beans, rice, canned goods, and salt are essential. In a matter of hours, the supermarkets will be completely empty. And thirdly, withdraw a significant amount of cash. Cards will not be accepted, and ATMs may be out of service. The banks will be closed, and only paper will have value. He paused, allowing his words to resonate, and then continued. Make sure to secure a means of transportation that can withstand the electromagnetic pulse. Cars manufactured before 1980, bicycles, or even horses if given the opportunity. Those who do not possess any of these items will be condemned to remain where they are. Gather simple devices that run on batteries but do not contain chips. Old lanterns, analog radios, and basic tools are essential. Don't forget to stock up on matches, candles, lanterns, firewood, and blankets. The American winter is relentless, and without electricity, many will face freezing. Those who rely on daily medications need to ensure a supply of at least 3 months. Pharmacies, unfortunately, will not be able to operate. As he spoke, I began to envision the days that lay ahead of me, filled with challenges. On the second day, fear turned into violence. The crowds in the cities began to realize that this was not an ordinary blackout. Stores were being looted and people were attacking each other in disputes over the last packages of food. The streets of Los Angeles were turning into a true battlefield, with gangs dominating every corner. The police, accompanied by the National Guard, were struggling to contain the situation, but many of them were also lacking the necessary equipment. It was then that Jesus turned his gaze to the interior of the country. The rural areas, although they can resist for a longer time, will not be immune to the challenges that are approaching. The electric pumps will dry up, and the modern tractors will come to a standstill. The harvest will then stagnate, and food will not reach the cities. Desperate, many will begin to walk miles in search of help. However, the cities will have nothing to offer. On the third day, I witnessed something even deeper. Millions of people were awakening to reality, realizing that this was not just a passing phase. Panic spread, dominating hearts. However, amidst all this horror, something wonderful began to emerge. The churches that prepared themselves became true islands of hope. Jesus revealed to me a congregation in Denver that had stocked up on water, food, and old equipment. They had an analog radio, through which they transmitted messages of encouragement and practical guidance. My church should be a place that feeds hundreds of people, that mobilizes teams dedicated to visiting the elderly, caring for children, and providing basic medical care, especially during times when hospitals are non-operational. This is the essence I envision for our community. Jesus says, with a gaze that reflects a gentle pain, "We are not just a Sunday club, but a living body, prepared to serve in difficult times. "But Lord," I asked, "how could they have supplies if everything was at a standstill?" "Because they heeded my warnings," he replied. "For months, they not only stored resources for themselves, but also dedicated themselves to helping others." The vision began to fade, and suddenly I found myself back at the top of the mountain, contemplating the entire country before me. Jesus spoke with a solemn voice, laden with meaning. He announced that the first period of darkness would come to an end after exactly 72 hours. Thus, on December 24th at 3:33 a.m., some regions began to regain power. However, the damage caused would be immense. More than 2 million lives will tragically be lost. The economy, in turn, will be in shambles. Many will consider this event the worst disaster ever to occur. However, they will be deeply mistaken. As I watched the scene, I felt my heart sink. It was then that I noticed other shadows forming, this time rising from the east. "The second darkness will approach in 8 months, Jesus revealed. The date set is August 21st, 2016. This event will not be something natural. It is a cyber attack meticulously planned that will be accompanied by physical sabotage. America's enemies will take advantage of the moment when the electrical system of the West is still weakened, a consequence of the catastrophe that will occur in December." This new darkness was singular. Somehow, it was even more terrifying than the first. It was not the result of the forces of nature, but rather of human malice. Little codes spread like poison, infiltrating the energy systems that still resisted. Meanwhile, groups of saboteurs were carrying out physical attacks on transformers and substations in strategic locations across the country. At midnight Eastern Time, they planned to take control of the power plants that stretch from New York to Texas. With a deep voice, Jesus explained, "But it's not just a digital invasion, Mike. There will be teams of terrorists attacking critical infrastructures in 12 major cities simultaneously." He watched, horrified, as the dawn sky lit up with explosions in New York. Before we continue, just one request. Please subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot to keep going. Boston, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Atlanta, Miami, Chicago, Detroit, Houston, Dallas, Nashville, and Charlotte. These places were not just simple power plants. They transformed into vibrant substations, dynamic control centers, and even the sites where engineers tirelessly fought to keep the electrical grid running. This time, it will not only be the light that goes out, warns Jesus. The attacks will also focus on water and natural gas systems, in addition to targeting major internet hubs and emergency communications. For 3 long days, 2/3 of the eastern part of the country will be completely isolated from civilization. What unfolded next left me speechless. Thousands of people were trapped in the subways, with no way to escape. In Texas, patients faced death, while even emergency generators failed to provide assistance. However, what impacted me the most was not just the devastation itself. It was the absolute collapse of social order. How will a meticulously planned attack unfold? It is not a natural disaster. The fear will be much more intense, Jesus explained. People will live in terror of the possibility of new waves of violence. They will believe that foreign invasions are about to happen. The panic that has settled in has surpassed even that of the first darkness. Martial law has been declared, but the military seems to be in a state of blindness and deafness, completely unable to communicate. Meanwhile, the police were trying to maintain order, but many of them were without radios, without computers, and without any means of coordination. The situation was becoming increasingly chaotic. In various locations, armed groups united into militias with the aim of protecting their communities. On the other hand, in other places, criminal gangs have taken over entire neighborhoods. However, once again, Jesus revealed something surprising and distinct to me. Churches that had absorbed the lesson of the first darkness. Look at this in Richmond, Virginia. He pointed. The building was surrounded by hundreds of people. After the month of December, the entire congregation decided to prepare. Now there is enough food and water to serve 2,000 people for 30 days. Before we continue, just one request. Please subscribe to our channel. It really helps us keep going. In addition, medications, security teams, and protected communication systems are available. Upon observing, I realized that the church operated like a small town, where everyone organized themselves into work fronts. Dedicated teams were clearing the rubble, while makeshift doctors were struggling to care for the injured. Vigilance groups were organizing to protect against looters, while others gathered in prayer, day and night. "See the difference, Mike," Jesus said. "They didn't just keep it to themselves. The doors were open to welcome all those in need. This is the essence that sets my church apart from groups that only care about surviving. Here, we prepare to serve, not just to seek our own salvation." This second darkness also lasted exactly 3 days. The recovery, however, was much slower than the first time. Jesus revealed to me that it would take more than a year to restore power in some regions. The devastation was so immense that in certain areas it would be necessary to rebuild the electrical system from scratch. The number of dead had already surpassed 8 million people. My heart ached with sadness. "Lord, how can you allow this? How can you let so many innocents lose their lives?" It was then that Jesus turned to me, tears in his eyes. "Mike, I am not the cause of these situations, but I am the one who uses them. This nation has distanced itself from me, preferring to trust in technology and governments instead of turning to its Creator. However, these difficulties will serve as a pathway for many to return to my heart, people who otherwise would never have sought me out." It was at that moment that he revealed something to me that sent chills down to my bones. Suddenly, the scene before me transformed. I saw churches spreading across the country, growing in an impressive way. Before, those people who stood out among the believers now found themselves in search of answers, pleading to discover how to cultivate a true relationship with God. I witnessed baptisms being performed in rivers and lakes, as many buildings had been destroyed. And Jesus, with a voice full of compassion, proclaimed, "During these times of darkness, more people will turn to genuine faith than in 50 years of preaching combined." Suffering has that transformative power. He takes from humanity what they considered essential, thus revealing what they truly need. It was then that the third vision emerged, making the 2 previous ones seem insignificant. Jesus announced that the third darkness would fall upon the world on January 15, 2027. This time, the entire continental territory of the United States will plunge into darkness simultaneously. What I witnessed was terrifying. A solar storm, 3 times more intense than that of 2025, was hitting the planet at the exact moment when terrorist cells, spread throughout the nation, launched coordinated attacks against thousands of targets. Jesus revealed that, in the first hour, all essential power plants, substations, and transformers will be destroyed or deactivated. For 3 days and 3 nights, from Alaska to Florida, and from Maine to California, darkness will reign, for there will be no electricity anywhere. The magnitude of the situation surpassed any imagination. With no power anywhere in the country, transportation systems faced total collapse. Trains stopped abruptly in the middle of nowhere, while airports turned into true refugee camps, with passengers stranded and unaware of when they could resume their journeys. The interstate highways were filled with abandoned cars, lined up for hundreds of miles like true metal graveyards. The death toll will exceed 30 million. Jesus, with his voice choked with sadness, utters these words: "Most will not succumb to violence, but rather to the cold, hunger, thirst, and medical emergencies that remain untreated." The images unfolding before the eyes are of a true apocalypse. Northern cities immersed in a freezing January face a desolate scenario. Entire families are enduring the intense cold inside their own homes, struggling to keep warm. In the South, crowds are suffering from water scarcity, while the pumps remain inoperative. Hospitals becoming true cemeteries, filled with lost lives, and pharmacies being looted by desperate people in search of insulin, heart medications, everything that could save the life of a loved one. And even in the face of this deep despair, something surprising was revealed. I observed communities that, after facing the first 2 tragedies, not only endured but also thrived. "Look at that village in Missouri," Jesus said as he pointed with his hand. There I witnessed a remarkable transformation after the first darkness. What was once a desolate place is now filled with life. They built windmills to grind grains, dug manual wells, and organized community gardens. Furthermore, They dedicated themselves to training young people and adults in ancestral skills, such as blacksmithing and carpentry. When the third darkness settled in, they barely noticed. They were not just surviving, they were living in a fuller way than before. They learned to trust in me and in each other instead of relying on systems that can fail, Jesus explained. And that is exactly what I desire for my people. Not a forced return to primitive life, but a reconnection with what truly matters: community, simplicity, and trust in me. It was at that moment that he began to give me detailed instructions on how to prepare myself and how to teach others to prepare for these three events. Jesus revealed to me that the preparations for the periods of darkness would not be the same. For the first one, which will take place in December, people should focus on the essentials: food, water, warmth, and safety. As for the second one, scheduled for August, it will be essential to strengthen the community and think about long-term sustainable solutions. In January, for the third challenge, it will be essential that everyone is completely self-sufficient, ready even to help in the reconstruction of civilization. He shared with me a detailed schedule with a deadline until September 2025. Now the time to act is now. Start storing 3 months' worth of food and water. Acquire a vintage car from the 70s if possible, or at least bicycles. It is essential to withdraw cash from the bank and strengthen ties with neighbors. In October 2025, preparations should be expanded. It is time to learn how to plant and preserve food, practice basic medical care, and form or participate in community groups focused on preparedness. It will also be important to train to live without electricity for a few days. As November 2025 approaches, it will be time to make the final adjustments to face the first darkness. This includes installing wood heating sources, gathering cold weather clothing and extra blankets, establishing communication plans with family members, and storing extra supplies to share. On December 15, 2025, when classes begin, it will be the last opportunity to prepare. It is time to fill all the containers with water, buy what is still missing, and gather with trusted family and friends. It will also be a time to seek spiritual preparation through prayer and repentance. From January to July 2026, we will have a period of recovery from the first darkness, but also of preparation for the second. This will be a time to strengthen communities, learn new skills, and help those who have not prepared. On August 21st, 2026, we will face the second darkness. The communities that organize together will be able to survive and help others. Between September 2026 and January 2027, we will enter the final phase of preparation. It is the time for us to become partially independent, producing local energy, learning to manufacture what is necessary, and developing a community defense. On January 15, 2027, the third darkness will arrive. Only those who have prepared for years will be ready to withstand it. Jesus made it clear that all of this is just half of what truly matters. Physical preparation is important, Mike, but spiritual preparation is vital. What truly saves is a heart aligned with me. People need to repent now, not wait for the crisis. They must accept me as Savior and learn to fully trust in me. He spoke with intensity. I want you to learn to pray for real, not just quick prayers before meals, but deep conversations with me about every aspect of life. I want you to read my word daily, not just on Sundays. I want you to forgive those who have hurt you, for carrying resentment in times of darkness will destroy you from within. I wish for you to build real relationships with other believers, people you can trust when the systems fail. So, he showed me something that took my breath away. After the third darkness, I saw the United States rebuilding itself in a completely new way. The process would take years, but what would emerge would be stronger and more humane. Jesus said, "People will learn to depend on each other and on me. Technology will return, but this time with wisdom. United communities, strong families. The church will finally be what it always should have been, the heart of community life." I saw cities where churches were not just Sunday buildings, but vibrant centers where practical skills were taught, resources were shared, and collective decisions were made. Believers would live simply, valuing relationships more than material goods. "This is my plan, Mike," Jesus said, "to use the darkness to restore my people, break the dependence on flawed systems, and build trust in me, which never fails." However, his expression became serious. Not everyone will believe. Many will say it is alarmism, that it is a conspiracy. They will trust the government and technology. I am returning with specific information, dates, signs, and instructions. The clearer the warning, the greater the chances that some will actually listen. He held my shoulders firmly and looked me in the eyes. "When you return, some will believe immediately, while others will say you've gone mad. Some have already started to prepare, while others will wait until they see the dawns in December, and then they will panic. But tell everyone, Mike, that we use more than they can imagine. I don't want anyone to perish, and that's why I'm giving these warnings now, while there's still time." I felt a force pulling me back, but I insisted. What if they don't believe me? And if I can't convince them? He smiled, a mixture of tenderness and sadness in his gaze. "You are not responsible for convincing anyone. Your only obligation is to be faithful and deliver the message. I will make sure it reaches those who need to hear it. And remember, the darkness is not the end, but the beginning of the greatest spiritual awakening in history. Those who prepare and persevere will see my glory in a way that times of comfort would never reveal." The pull became irresistible, and I felt my spirit being dragged back. As the vision faded, I heard a gentle voice. "You are never alone. I will always be with you. And those who trust in me will not be put to shame, not even in the darkest moments." Suddenly, I opened my eyes with a desperate sigh. I was in a hospital bed surrounded by beeping machines. My supervisor seemed to have aged 20 years, and a nurse was checking my vital signs, shocked. "My God, you're back," she said, with tears streaming down her face. "You were unconscious for 14 hours. The doctors thought you wouldn't make it." A doctor rushed in, flipping through my tests with disbelief. "Yes, Mr. Theodore, that is impossible. You suffered a severe trauma in the accident and were deprived of oxygen for a long time. It was supposed to result in irreversible damage, but here you are, talking to me." The doctor was staring at me as if he were seeing a ghost. "Your heart stopped for over an hour. We recorded a total absence of brain activity for almost 6 hours. By any medical standard, you should be dead. And yet you are here, lucid, talking to me. In 30 years of my career, I have never seen anything like it. But I knew I was no longer the same man who held the steering wheel that morning. In body, yes, and even the recovery was too quick to be explained. But inside, in my soul, I had been transformed. I had seen the future, looked into the eyes of Jesus, and he gave me a mission that now burned within me with an urgency impossible to ignore. In the first week, I could hardly talk about what happened without the tears falling. Every time I tried to describe my encounter with Jesus and the visions of the three darknesses, the emotions overwhelmed me. They were not tears of sadness, but of impact from the love I felt and the weight of what he showed me. Little by little, I began to share my experience. First with Jack, my supervisor, who immediately noticed that something profound had changed in me. Then with neighbors, I soon found myself sitting with the pastor of a small local church, who listened in amazement and took notes on every detail. Within a matter of days, my testimony spread. First among the Christians in the region, then on radios, YouTube channels, and faith websites across the country. Some believed immediately and began to prepare, while others laughed, saying that I was delusional from the trauma of the accident. But something powerful began to happen. Entire communities mobilizing, churches organizing workshops on food storage, water purification, basic medical care, and above all, spiritual preparation. In the past few weeks, I have visited various congregations and groups that invited me, sharing my story repeatedly. Each account brought precise details, the dates, the practical instructions, and above all, the urgent spiritual transformation that we need to experience now. I met families who sold their homes in the suburbs to move to rural communities, where they can cultivate, harvest, and support each other. I saw churches that completely changed their focus, beginning to teach both practical survival and spiritual life. Meanwhile, I also faced resistance. Some Christians accused me of spreading fear instead of faith. Pastors refused to listen to me, claiming that God would never allow tragedies of such magnitude. Others simply called me crazy. To those I say, I didn't ask for this. I didn't seek this responsibility. I would give anything to be back in my backyard, drinking coffee and thinking about trivial things. But I can't ignore what I saw. I can't pretend that Jesus was just a dream. I can't stay silent about something that can save millions of lives. The sign he showed me is approaching. On December 15, 2025, auroras will appear in skies where they have never been seen before. When green lights dance over the earth, people will have only 6 days to prepare for the first darkness. Today is September 7, 2025, which means there are only 105 days left until that moment. It is enough time for those who start now, but insufficient for those who leave it for tomorrow. Therefore, here is what I ask. Starting today, store food and water for 90 days for each member of your household. Have money or assets saved. If you can, consider buying a vintage car, Model 980 or. Prepare for a new chapter in your life. Start pedaling, not just on your bike, but also towards new friendships with your neighbors. Learn to preserve food, to care for small wounds, and to cultivate a garden. For those of you who are willing to live without electricity for a few days, organize everything by November. But above all, prepare your heart. Dedicate yourself to reading the word of truth. Forgive, reconcile, and strengthen the bonds with your brothers in faith. When the dawns arrive, gather with those you trust. Be strong not only to survive but to serve. Remember, it is not just about resisting the darkness, but being transformed by it. God is not sending these difficult times to destroy, but to awaken. Those who endure will see a light greater than any other that has ever illuminated the skies. You can ignore all of this. Think it's nothing more than a delusion of a truck driver who almost lost his life on the road. You can try to explain my recovery as a mere medical coincidence or even laugh at the dates I share. But consider perhaps that it is God Himself who loves you more than you can imagine calling you now. Not to scare you, but to save you. My name is Mike Theodore. 3 weeks ago, I died in an accident and was without life for more than 14 hours. During that time, I encountered Jesus face to face. He sent me back with a clear warning. First darkness, December 21st, 2025, at 3 a.m. Pacific Time. Second darkness, August 21st, 2026, at midnight Eastern Time. Third darkness, January 15th, 2027, across the continental territory. Millions will die if they do not listen, but millions will also be awakened, will come to know Christ, and will participate in the greatest spiritual revival in history. The choice is yours. Time is running out. What will you choose? What a powerful and urgent testimony. The Bible warns us in Amos chapter 4 verse 12, "Prepare yourself, O Israel, to meet your God." This message goes beyond simply predicting tragedies. It invites us to prepare our hearts, restore our faith, and live with a renewed purpose. Thank you for sharing this transformative experience and for reminding us that even darkness can be used by God to awaken lives. And to you who followed us until the end, may the blessings of heaven surround your home, your mind, and your spirit. We will meet again in the next video. Stay strong, prepare yourself, and serve.